Cool. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the stream. Today I'm going to be working on the Melodist again, and there are a couple things that I could work on at this point. I've been doing some interesting stuff with like scripting, cutscenes, and stuff like that for the game, and I can get into reasons why I think that's a good idea instead of having it in the code somehow or something like that. And I could also just work on maps. Like a big thing that I'm kind of working on is just getting content into the game, making the first part of the game sort of interesting, not showing off too much, but just being like, hey, here's this interesting world where you can explore. Music is sort of symmetric with the world in some interesting ways. And that's the first area for you, and then that sort of expands out in different areas later. Huge thing that needs to get done is just actually making that bunch of content. I'll probably start with maps. Maps are a good, nice, relaxing thing. Got the candle, and I have a candle out. I got my tea, and now I have the map editor. So that's just like the trifecta of relaxation. We have some conversations about programming techniques in the chat. Common beginner trap for a programmer is thinking a struct is for grouping things you consider logically related. Yeah, exactly. I completely agree, Miyotatsu. There's this sort of weird, I hesitate to call it a virus, but but some sort of prevalent notion, I guess, in software engineering that it's all about forming your mental model, and I just completely disagree with that. I don't think it's about the mental model at all. In fact, I've had many times in this project where my mental model has screwed me, and it really was just solved by thinking about what needed to happen in the program. Even at a higher level, you don't have to be a genius, you don't have to know exactly what the hardware is doing. You just have to think about the sort of things that the computer needs to do to get the thing done. And that obviously that implies some understanding of the hardware, but it's not if not the hardware, you're going to be learning crazy object stuff for the rest of your life and dealing with it and translating that to what the hardware has to do somehow at some point, which is not good for the software quality. It's not good for your mental understanding. I'm going to stop it there, I was just talking about how calming this was, and now I'm getting all worked up about object-oriented programming. I'd much rather just, let's put some tiles down, let's just get some good old stuff here. A huge thing that I really want to not encourage, that's the wrong word, just do in the early parts of the game is really just have secrets, have interesting things that people can find by doing something that they didn't expect to produce any real result. So, I was playing the original Legend of Zelda recently, and it's just so awesome, how many things you find for no reason. You just put a bomb somewhere and it makes a hole in the wall, and that's just amazing. That's such a cool experience. Instead of, I enjoy modern Zelda games just because I'm sort of a fanboy, but just this sort of in modern Zelda games you have stuff where it's there's a crack in the wall, what are you gonna do? And it's just kind of lame. It's yeah, I knew that was there. Why do you insult me this way? So I don't want to do that. I want to have interesting secrets that are hey, I really didn't expect that to be there, Nice soothing tiles? Yes, Miyotatsu. These tiles are the most soothing of tiles. But yeah, that's sort of the philosophy I'm taking with this first area. So, I have some little things, kind of a benign example that won't spoil anything for you is hey, you have this thing. It's just a collection of leaves, right? There aren't explicitly laid out doors or things that signify to the player, hey, this is a teleport, but it's just sort of showing the player that hey, if you walk into this area, you'll hit this teleport, and when that happens, you go into a little secret sort of area, and that's interesting. It's a way of showing the player, at least this is what the intention is. It's just a way of showing the player that hey, there are cool little things that you can find, You don't have to, we're not going to feed them to you. You'll have to explore, and it'll be interesting. But it's just showing the player that sort of thing can happen. And there are other things here that have actually worked out on in previous streams, but I kind of want to not mention certain things because I feel like they'll spoil certain things for people. Although maybe it doesn't matter too much. Maybe people will forget by the time they actually play the game. Who knows? Either way, secrets are important. That's the whole point of what I was just going off on. Very unproductive day so far. Let's think about that. There's my signature. I left it in the map's collision. Don't mind me over here. Yeah, I think I'll work on this for a little, kind of going over here, making this part of the map a little bit more fleshed out. We can think about some places to hide some secrets along the way. Yeah, that'd be good. So we'll just do some of this. And at some point I'll probably want to kind of switch gears, be more programmer focused, start working on maybe the scripting stuff. That stuff is pretty fun to work on. I'm really bad at it right now, but that's fine. What am I doing here? Right, this needs to be on layer 0. Layer 1, we can just go right there. And we'll just have something similar over here. Tatsu, I remember the Volan map having rewarding secrets, like getting to that one boss, if I remember that. I do remember that. That was amazing. Like, it was just like, and the thing is, like, it's almost low effort on the developer's part. You know what I mean? Like, making the boss probably wasn't low effort, but like, just hiding things like that, like, that's not hard to do. It's probably more effort to explicitly go out of your way to make something obvious to the player. And so it's like almost like you're wasting your time to make a worse experience. Like, it's just not good. That game was so cool because you could hide behind trees, you could do all these different things, and people try to say that sort of thing is bad game design, and I'm like, I completely disagree. Like, it's awesome. It's so cool as a player. But yeah, that game, yeah, I sort of wish it turned into something more, because that was a really awesome experience, just for what it was, which was not super substantial. I'm not gonna worry about decorating too much. Let's make the map. So I need to move the player spawn for now, because I do not want to run over there every single time I want to test this area. So there could be something down here that's like interesting, because you sort of have a different way of going here, and it could produce different results. Something that's interesting there is we could, put some notes. We have an E here, and maybe if you go on the top route, it's like, oh, let's make it major or something. So we have a C, an E, and then let's make a G, so that forms a C major triad. And then let's say they go down. Maybe we want to do G2, but we also want to do a B, which will actually form an E minor, at least if we have another E. So that's kind of interesting. Like, you have this sort of branching paths idea. So we're just sort of like, oh, well, we jump, we make the jump, it's happy. So it's like, da da da, and then you get this wonderful, wonderful music, placeholder music for the record. That sort of makes you a happy camper. But let's say you go down, you fall, that's sad. So you go, I should reposition that note for sure, but either way, it happened. And then, interesting. oh, it's sad. You didn't make the jump. You suck, you know? I feel like I should spread this out a little more, you know? I should make several jumps. Sad. Yeah. Yeah, because that's something that could be, you know, interesting down the line. Like, there's no real consequences for it here, but it's like, hey, like, are you depressed that you fell? Because you should be, says the music. Is that not producing? Oh, G major. Interesting. Is that true? The chord interpretation code is just like really bad. I should really like think about how to make that better, but E, D, G. Oh, that definitely is G major. I'm not stupid. Well, I'm stupid right now. My past self was actually not too bad. And you know, if we were absolutely crazy, we could put a C here. And it might start raining, you know, who knows? Because it's a C major 7. Although, so that's one thing, right? You just heard a happy clip. I want to fix this. Even though we actually had a C major 7. So that's like kind of lame. Why? I should also maybe make that jump a little harder. I absolutely love that. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate it. I'm glad you like it. So that's like kind of cool, you know. If you had not missed the jump, you would never have experienced that. So the game is sort of like, doesn't that suck, you know? I'm just, that's not the actual point, but you know, it's kind of funny to say that. This should be a harder jump. That's way too easy, honestly. I'm not gonna lie. Let's get rid of this bridge here. I was like, oh, it's the start of the game. Like, now that it's interesting to go down, you know, maybe we don't want everybody to make it, you know? So we'll do the thing where it's like, you make the jump. Doesn't that suck? So if you make the jump, you're never gonna know. Like, you're just gonna stroll along and be happy, you know, and you will never know the difference. But let's say you're terrible, right? You're like, it's first time playing a game, and you're like, oh, I love music-based, relaxing games. So you come and play this game, and you're like, okay, let me just hold on. Let me make that better. Actually, this should catch you, anyways. Like, you shouldn't get multiple tries for this. Like, that's nonsense. Let's change that a little bit. So like layer 2, sure. Like maybe if you deliberately fall down here, you know. All right, no, let's make it a bridge. That might be kind of, I kind of like that. Love that. We'll do a little thing here, you know, something like that. Make the jump impossible at first, but later you learn something that makes it possible. Maybe. That's not a bad idea. Although I don't know what the player would learn necessarily, because the game is sort of, the player doesn't progress that much. Like, the progression is in the story and what the player understands about the world, not necessarily the player's like abilities or something like that. Although you might be talking about something where it's like, hey, you didn't know that this would turn out this way or something like that, which is definitely an interesting thought. So maybe I'll think about that. Okay, so there we go. We get the C major 7, which is more like melancholy, like, oh, You missed the jump, didn't you? To which the player responds, yes, and... let's make a cave here. Actually, no, that incentivizes the player to go down here. And that's, like, no good. Like, from up here, you don't even know... I guess you do see the note right there. So let's add a camera focus region right here. That's sort of like, oh, you're only supposed to be looking up here, my friend. There you go. So, like, now, regardless of resolution, you can be here, you can be here, you can be here. No matter what, you won't see the note down there. So you don't actually know whether it's good to go down there. You'll only go down there if you're terrible, and you're like, oh, what the heck, there's like a little secret. But it's almost interesting, because then you see this branching paths idea. You're never going to get up there, You're never going to see what could have been. And now you're down here in Sadland, where it rains and the music's sad. Like, how horrible, Yeah, to hear that chord, it's just like a punch in the gut, This game is all about that. So anyways, that's kind of like a cool little thing. I wasn't thinking that for this area, but I actually really like it. For the record, I can just do that, since, like, you can't fall down there. This is some hot game design happening here. Yes. Like I said, getting in the mood, tea, candle, very good idea. There's a plane outside. If you didn't know from the sound. I don't know if you can hear that, actually, to be honest. Anyways. But, maybe... So you see this interesting thing down here, which is cool. But, like, I don't want necessarily... Like, I want this thing to be permanent. Like, I want people to... Like, regardless of what happens here, they can't come back and see the other thing necessarily. Like, they can't... Because that sort of ruins the value of the diversion in the first place. I would think. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just interesting that the player understood that diversion. Although, I'm going to say no for right now, and just say, no, what happened, happened, So we're going to go ahead and say, okay, well, we're going to reward the player for making it here, right? This is an achievement. So, let's put, like, let's put a collectible, You get a little piece of the story filled out for you at the end of this area by collecting this music piece. Like, these are cool to have. But down here you get this interesting thing where it's like, oh well, this happened, so that's a sight into the game as a system, which is cool. So either way, actually, like, this is I find this idea interesting because it's not just like you did it, good job, you didn't, like, die, it's more like, hey, you did it, here's a reward, versus no, you didn't, but here's like here's a view that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, So it's less about success and failure, more about different perspectives on the same thing, which is kind of cool, I think. Now, what could happen is that they just, like, miss this jump, and that's just bad. So maybe I should make that a little bit nicer. So we should make it, like, pretty easy for people once they've gotten past this first little gap here, because that's kind of like a pretty difficult gap, especially for, like, the first thing in the game. So we'll just make it like, oh, here's a little. There you go, buddy. Like, that should help you out. Let's make it symmetric, because themes or something. Something like that. So it's very hard to miss that. Like, if you miss that, like, yeah, you deserve to go on the sad path. You don't deserve this. I mean, if you go back, you'll get it. But you don't deserve this for sure. Like, that's just bad. And same with this. Like, you can fall and still make that. So There you go, buddy. Yeah, so like here you go, you come over. Oh, wow. I suck, apparently. Maybe I should make that a little bit easier. Considering I'm very familiar with how to control the player, obviously, because I've been doing it for like a long time. But I can make it, like, let's make it. You know, I will make it easier, but there we go, okay. Oh, happy, you get a music page, like, yeah, cool. You could technically fall down, although that's what I was sort of talking about, like, you don't necessarily want them to be able to fall down, and just do the thing over again. I'll go and say it doesn't matter, actually. I'll say, like, yeah, you can if you want, but the whole point is that, like, you're not incentivized to, like, there's no real reason to, you know? Oh my goodness. Although you do see the music note. So let's duplicate that and be like over here. You are incentivized, though, because you see the notes. I think you shouldn't be able to fall if you get the good path. Fair enough. Yeah, I was sort of bouncing back and forth. I guess I'll say, like, because you said that, maybe it's, like... And because that was my intuition, maybe it's just a good idea to just not have that as a possibility. So for the notes in the series, maybe only make the first/next note visible/active at a time. And on that and what Miyotatsu said, you're incentivized because you see the notes. That's why I added these camera focus regions. So you actually can't see them when you're here. Like, regardless of what resolution you're playing at, like, you can never just see the notes. So you actually never know, unless you fall, that this is a possibility. Like, you think that if you fall, you're just gonna respawn. So first you just think, oh, I gotta make this jump, you know. And then if you don't, you figure out that you can fall. Although, here is like, yeah, you can fall and just go back there. So yeah, I take what I said back. I'm going to make it so that, you know, yeah, you can't fall. You just can't fall. I'm just going to say that. You're just going to go up here, and then this will get up some way. So something more like this. Sort of what I'm thinking. Okay, and then we'll change the tiles a little bit to fit here. There we go. Yeah, I kind of like that better. Just because it's like, you can't... Like... First it adds replayability, but that's like not necessarily an issue in terms of how good the game is. But it makes things a little bit more interesting, because it's like, what was down there? Well, you'll never know. I mean, you could theoretically like save and load or something, but that's basically just starting over the game, which is like, okay, you know. So I don't really see a problem with that. I think that it's interesting that the choice diverges you, just in general. So that's kind of cool. See, I had this auto mapping thing for a while, and it was nice, but after I could select things like this, like, it just made things kind of better. And I didn't feel a need to put it back in there when I like kind of re-implemented a bunch of stuff, because I've been learning a lot. And I wanted to make the thing good. But yeah, it didn't seem to be as big of a benefit as it used to be, for sure. So let's see. We're gonna do a little thing here. Oh no, that is not what I wanted. I wanted that. Yeah, putting this stuff in the world is just kind of a little pain. But I like to do it like early, because otherwise I know that I just like, oh, I really don't want to do that, and then I just never do for a while, and that's just kind of annoying. So yeah, like this is pretty good. Maybe this is partially out of laziness, but also just partially like, hey, this might look kind of cool. Is like, hey, let's put a bridge here, and then like they can't fall through because the player's taller than 2 tiles, so they can't walk here anyways. So that's fine, but it still looks kind of nice. So collision, and we'll just do this. Yeah, and they can't. Let me test that to be sure. But hello, Marcos Don. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce. What in the world just happened here? Oh, because I didn't modify the collision. Absolutely ridiculous. And I didn't take out those bridges. What am I thinking? I am too in the mood. The candle just distracted me, you know? It's just not good. So here we go. That looks correct. I really need to make these tiles brighter, because like, it's hard to edit collision sometimes. I am too in the mood. Take that however you would like, Miyotatsu. Yeah, there's particles. I need to fix that at some point. But yeah, the player can't get in there, so that's good. And you know, maybe they fall. You know, maybe they come down here and like, you can't fall here, you can only fall to the right. So let's just trash this whole section of the land. Ooh. I did notice a crash bug with the editor recently when I was doing like bulk tile things, so maybe there's a bug in there. I was also drawing out of bounds, so maybe I'm doing something ridiculous there, but but yeah, I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't happen. It's usually fine, like it's usually not a problem, but I just did notice that the other day. It happened like kind of inconsistently, which is obviously unfortunate. Did I just draw? Okay, cool. Okay. So, let's do a little, you know, do a little good stuff. Good stuff there. Marcos Don, what genre is this game besides platformer? Twitch keeps removing my Twitch keeps removing my tags, and I don't know why, but can I just please add? I will answer the question in a second, I'm sorry. There. I don't know why it keeps removing my tags, but there we go. What genre is this game? So yeah, it is like a side scroller sort of. I hesitate to use the word platformer because the game isn't about platforming. You know, the game is it's sort of like it's got a story, but it's not like a linear narrative. But it's the whole idea is that music is it's tied to the world in some interesting ways. So you sort of see the symmetry between music, where it's like, hey, some notes occur and that causes these, like, for example, vines to grow in the world, which can allow you to jump further and like explore. And it just is a game about exploring that interesting symmetry, and it explores related such things. So that's sort of the idea behind the game. But yeah, it's not about platforming. Although it does have traditional platformer, I guess, tropes, like, hey, it is a side-scroller, you do run, you do jump, but it's not supposed to be like hard platforming, like, oh, like, can you do this in this time? It's supposed to be more like, hey, explore, find some interesting things. A very similar spirit to Fez, I would argue, probably. But probably different in some ways, too. So yeah, that's the idea. Let's just do this lazily right now, and then layer 1. Let's just do the thing as one does. Cool. So we can just sort of cut this stuff out. Get out of here. Absolutely not. Yeah, the notes definitely do have a Fez feel. I mean, ooh, crash. That's not good. I don't know why that happened. Interesting. Hopefully I didn't lose any work here. Doesn't look like I did. I mean, I saved. But yeah, I've been having some weird crashes. I think it has something to do with tile editing, so I'll have to run into a debugger for a little while at some point. The notes do have a Fez feel, though. You know, to be honest, the decision to make it a pixel art game was like not always just like super well thought out. It just felt nice, and obviously it's something that people are familiar with, and I did have this idea of having this sort of feel to the game, but it probably could have been achieved with a different style. But in general, it actually worked out pretty well in the end, because the engine can have pretty basic note synthesis. Like the actual sounds for these notes are generated in the engine, which, you know, if you were doing something like very realistic painterly stuff like that, that would not be the case, right? You'd want to have a piano or something, and that's much more complicated to generate than something like a triangle wave or a square wave or something like that. So, you know, so it did kind of work out nice in the end. Excuse me. Goodness gracious, this tea, man. All right. Well, I don't think it needs to be a well thought out reason to be pixel art. If it feels good and makes you happy, something you'd want to play, that's a good guiding principle in and of itself. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. There's been a lot of, like, many interesting conversations I've had recently, not necessarily related to game development, but just like, you talk about like philosophy and like, oh, like, why do you value certain things? And it's like, so people ask like interesting conversations on moral nihilism and stuff. It's like, why do you value eating? You know, why do you value these things? And ultimately it's like, you can't come up with a reason, but you just do. And just because it's a primal instinct sort of thing doesn't mean you value it any less. It just makes it from a different source, you know. And that sort of a similar sentiment here is like, just like it, you know, it's just good. So that still makes it valuable. It doesn't mean you can justify it necessarily, but it doesn't make it not valuable, you know. Risky Business series is entirely based on that instinct. Absolutely. Like, I think it's perfectly reasonable at the end of the day. I've been thinking about that a lot recently. So, in any case, we would like to sort of converge these paths. You know, you sort of have this interesting divergence. You don't want to stray too long right now, so let's have something like happen. Oh no, I didn't want to do that. So, you know, we'll go to layer 1, put a little thing that you can fall down into down here, and then back to layer 1. We'll just sort of have this around here, and we'll want to connect this little platform down here. Okay, that's great. So you can't get back up. You know, you can't fall down here. You can fall here, but that's a little far, so maybe I'll make another platform that you can sort of fall to, and then you fall down. But ultimately, this will sort of converge the paths, because you fall here, you can't get back up. So that's kind of nice. Let's go ahead and say, like, that's all going to be nothing. Let's do that. And that looks pretty nice. I mean, this needs to be decorated, but I won't worry about that just yet. Let's make another platform just to sort of fall down to, and then further. Maybe a little bit more like right there, and then maybe there's something hanging off right here that the player can jump to. So collision. We will have to make this actually go down a little bit, this collision right here, so they can't jump across and just go see the thing anyways. So we'll just have like right here. Tiles. Let's do a thing right there. And this. Why did I put that on layer 2? I must be not thinking clearly. 2 in the mood, yeah. I mean, absolutely, too far into the mood. Cool. So now we have this little thing here. You know, you probably can't jump up there anyways. So maybe, I'll keep it there just in case. Let's extend out this little platform a little bit. No, I would like to edit tiles, not collision. Layer 1. And there we go. So we have this little dropping sort of thing after the player goes through the successful portion, if they do. Just something like that. Let's go to layer 0 here, and that'll be good. If I modify collision to fit this a little bit better. Okay, that seems pretty good. Let's go and see how it plays. So Ooh, dogs barking outside. Always a good thing. Okay. So, you know, we're here, and the player's like, oh, I need to make this jump, obviously. So they do, because they're good. They've been taking their notes on, you know, run when jumping to jump far. And they're like, oh, I can't get down here. I don't like the camera here necessarily, but maybe it's not, you know, it's not even a problem necessarily, like, that the player, like, the player doesn't need this, it doesn't matter, like, let me explain a little bit clearer. You know, here, like, oh, I guess you could go back there. Oh, no. Okay, let's redo that then. Nice editor. Thank you, Marcoston. Definitely appreciate it. No, like, I really need to sort of fix camera focus regions. Like, there's only one bounding box. There should be, like, inside this rectangle and then target this rectangle. It's two separate things, which is how it used to be, but I just, like, didn't do it this time because I was lazy or something, which is not good. So, you know, not my best moment. Yeah, it's not a perfect system, but it could be a lot better for sure. There we go. That's like super good. You fall down, and then good to go. Now, granted, let's say you're, you know, you have an F in the class of moving around in the Melodist. So you're like not good, and you're like, okay, well, you know, I suck, so I just fall. And you see it rains, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. How cool is that? Like, there's this sort of movement in what happened there. Then you fall, and then you're good to go. Like, you can't get up here, so then the paths converge. So that's pretty good. Let's, you know, okay. I need to make the default layer for editing tiles, too. I'm gonna do that right now. Like, I don't know why I ever made it. Or I need to make it 1, not 2. So, you know, let's layer. Tile edit layer. Let's do a little search on that. Tile edit layer 2. No, it's got to be 1. Let's make that the default, because that's just yeah. That feel when you fail the movement class. I know, like, the bad kids, they go down here. You know, this is where we keep the bad kids in the class, you know. Let's full screen. So, okay. Tiles 2. No, actually, no. We're going to do 1 for sure. And let's just fill out these dark tiles here. And, you know, this is kind of boring. Like, let me make this a little bit more interesting. Just this flat sort of faceless. I really need to expand this a little bit. Can I just, like, there. And then on layer 1, I can remove some of this stuff. No child left behind. Yeah, you know, yeah, I see where you're coming from, but I respectfully disagree. This game is all about leaving people behind. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know what to say past that. Welcome to the chat room. Does Twitch always do that? Like, why is that a thing? Welcome to the chat room. Did I disconnect or something? Like, no. It always stresses me out. I think my internet's going bonkers. Okay. Twitch chat is so broken. Yeah, it doesn't seem to really work all that well. For what it is, like, it's not like nuts, but that's just a Twitch thing. Thank you, Will. Yeah, I have no idea. I actually like connected my computer to Ethernet like yesterday, and I was like streaming off of wireless before, and the connection was like so bad at certain points that I would get welcome to the chat room, and I'm like, oh no, like this thing is happening. But yeah, I mean, my internet is like, I have 0 dropped frames, so that's pretty absurd. So I would be very surprised if I disconnected or something. Okay, let's decorate this a little bit and make sure that this is okay looking, relatively. Marcos Don, is the source code available? Not right now. It probably will be eventually after the game's released, but I'm not releasing it at first because I would like to sell the game. You know, I've worked very hard on it. But it will be at some point, I'm sure. Like I'll probably release it like a few years after the game's released or something like that. Similar model to Handmade Hero. Oh no, why did I do that? Good thing I just recently implemented undo and redo, because that's nice to have, for sure. Collision. Like, that looks bad, but will anybody ever go there? Like, probably not, it's fine. Also, that's bad. Let me fix that. Tiles 2. And let's add some decorative things. You know, make it look snazzy, if you will. And also, let's add some variation to these tiles. The uniformity of those always drives me nuts, so it's really nice to not to bash on the art itself, because the art's great, because he actually provided me with multiple tiles. But I just like to have it have this wavy, sort of more natural look, so I like to sort of fill those out. Pythno, hi, Ryan Flory, thanks for answering me on Twitter regarding the questions I had about the Handmade Network game stream. My game looks really nice, thank you. Checked out some devlog videos on YouTube too. Thank you very much. I appreciate you checking out the videos. I'm glad it looks nice to you. Yeah, thanks for coming on the stream as well. It's awesome to have people here. Oh man, this mouse, it's a wonderful mouse, but like it has this double click. The driver, I think, probably has this double click bug where it double clicks even though I only click once. It's absolutely frustrating. Like it's just like, why did you? How hard could I've never written driver software, but like, come on, like really? Oh man. Okay. Let's have a tree there. We need some particle generators, so let's get a yellow leaf one right there. Boom. We're gonna have, let's see, little tree 4. Absolutely wonderful. Right there. There you go, buddy. 5. 5 also a perfectly reasonable choice for a little tree. Do I have a little tree 6? I don't. Let's do 2. Sure. Cool. Yeah, this looks pretty nice. Miyotatsu, probably poorly written debouncing code in the driver regarding false double click problem. Yeah, I don't know what debouncing is, to be honest, but you sound like you know what you're talking about, so I'll say like, yeah, that debouncing code. Yeah, I'm not really familiar with the software behind it. It's like, it certainly seems like something poorly written for sure. I really wish it was like I wish it just worked, you know? It's really frustrating to have like something so core to the experience on a computer like a mouse, at least for most things. Well, I shouldn't say that. For most things it shouldn't be, but you know, for most things it is, unfortunately. But it's very unfortunate to sort of have that sort of a problem for something like a mouse. Yeah, so I'm really happy with this little thing. I mean, I solved the problem of wanting to add a new secret, and I solved the problem of, you know, having more interesting stuff in the first area. Like, that's cool. So, yeah, I think I'll just keep going. Like, this is awesome. This is going well. That's the end of the map. I need to draw better boundaries here, but, you know, that's fine. When you press a button down, there's a physical bouncing that happens to create a messy analog signal rather than a clean on and off, and software needs to compensate for that with debouncing. Okay, interesting. That makes sense. I'm sure there's a good reason for that requirement. But yeah, apparently, like, I used this mouse on my old computer as well, and apparently there's a fix, but it still happened after I like installed the driver fix. I don't know. Just not a good experience, regardless. But you know, what can you do? Let's add something right here. You know, let's have a little thing that people can go into. Maybe nothing super interesting. Maybe just like a little thing that they see. You know. No. Layer 2, layer 1 is what I would like to go to. Again, this collision, I really just need to do a better job of drawing these collision squares. Shameless plug that I learned of debouncing myself on my show. Absolutely. Plug your stuff all you want because it's really awesome. I will definitely go to that link when the stream is over. Layer... Sorry, what? Why is that in layer 2? Ryan, what are you... Ugh. Absolutely ridiculous. I cannot believe myself. Yeah, we're gonna have a little thing like that. I think that's gonna be sweet. And then they can like go to the left. A secret within a secret. Who would have thought, you know? Who would have thought? It's not really a secret. It's like it's pretty obvious that it's there, but it's just like a little thing you can go into. Too secret for me. Let's see what the collision looks like. Again, it needs to be rendered better. Like, this is unacceptable. That's okay. That's good. Oh goodness. These hiccups. I think I would eventually, at some point, I would want like some more sophisticated like tile viewing tools, like something like having a list of checkboxes that are like, hey, only display this layer. That would be like super nice to have, because right now it's like a little confusing with this in the background and stuff like that. So it would be nice to just kind of throw that in there. It would be pretty straightforward. It wouldn't really be a hard problem. In fact, you know, I've been making maps, which is a good time, but you know, let's code that in there really quick. So we have this thing. Let's exit. So this isn't something I can hot reload. So we have tile editing. What am I doing? Editor editing data. Absolutely wonderful. This is like not great, but anyways, tile edit layer. Let's go ahead and say B32 display tile layer, and how many layers do we have? Layer count, and we will have to set this. We will have to initialize this. Also, mouse over entity in the tile editing data. What am I thinking? What am I doing with myself? I should just scrap all the code, you know? Let's scrap all of it. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Map layer count, and that's good. Okay, so we display that. Now we just have to have some UI for it. Go into the tile map editing thing, do tile palette. Yeah, see, the thing about this thing in particular is like you go into here and like it goes off the screen. So I would maybe I want to just sort of have the tiles and then maybe like a separate UI thing right here. That might be sort of more reasonable. I could technically like have a scroll thing, which honestly might not be the worst idea, but I don't want to deal with that right now. So I have this palette rect thing. The height is this, and the y is the height of the screen or of the render minus the height, which is pretty reasonable. So that's on the bottom left. But you know, I don't want to do this anymore. And let's just if zero that for now. Okay, so there we go. Now we just have just the tiles here. Why is this further down than it should be? The height is... Huh. Oh, I have a divider right there. Okay. Cool. So that's kind of a nice little... It fits on this. This is the only screen size that I care about in the editor, like minimum. So this is fine, and then I can just have little like layer stuff down here. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably good. Yeah, okay. So we'll make this layer controls rect, and we'll just say this thing 16 plus the UI rect dot width plus 16. I guess whatever. That's clearer to me. We'll make the y. Well, we'll have that depend on the height as well. And then the width will just be, I don't know, 150. Sure. Doesn't really matter. The height will be the map layer count times 30. Actually, this should be like 300 or something like that, 250 maybe. For both the which layer you're editing and also the checkboxes for which layers you want to show. So we have this map layer count, and that'll have room for all the layer buttons, which should be fine. So we'll just say, okay, well, the Y position of this will be the height of the render space minus whatever we said the height was, so it's at the bottom, and that's all fine. So first we do the UI for the actual tile select, but now we can just have separately, we'll have a UI column that's at the layer controls rect. Element heights of 30, and we'll just have this in there instead. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll make a rectangle. It's just like, hey, I want the layer controls rect to have a rectangle around it as well, or behind it, I guess. And maybe that'll be okay. Let's see if I have an error. I do not have an error. And we have a little thing. Okay, so that's wrong, but there we go, that's fine. These are wide, but that's room for also. Can I just please like do that? Thank you. Okay. So, you know, maybe a little bit wider, maybe 300 was the correct choice, and we'll say, well, you know, when we do this column thing, let's only make it half the width, and then we'll have another column that's half the width as well, but it's also going to be shifted over to the right by half the width. And in this case, we'll have for each here that goes through all the layers and just says, you know, we will want a toggler. So we'll say show layer that instead, and we don't want to do an equality comparison here. We'll say display layer at I, and then if this thing, well, actually we don't need an if statement. We just want to do that. Oh no. Display layer is not a member of state editor. Tile layer. Okay, I am so sorry. I am absolutely so sorry, Mr. Compiler. Okay, there we go. Those are a little thin. Maybe just stretch this out a little bit. There we go. That looks pretty good. So, you know, now we just need to make that actually do something. Push world tile. Here we go. We're in a layer, and we can just say, okay, well, we're rendering tiles. Only render this layer if we're going to say, if display tile layer for this particular layer index is true. And that will just, oh, okay. Okay, so you know we can jump into the map now. Perfect. Okay, that's awesome. So now, you know, if you're working on like this, for example, this is in layer 4. Let's uncheck everything but layer 4. And then we can just say, you know, when we're modifying the tiles here, then we can just not be confused when we change these tiles here. So that's kind of that's a nice little quality of life thing. That was kind of bothering me for a while because, I mean, you get confused sometimes. So it's kind of nice to have this as a tool. And that's a nice little thing. So now we can check all these to see how it looks. Perfect. Need to kind of fill this out a little bit. Let's go into layer 2, layer 1 actually, and add just some little, you know, kind of fill out this dark stuff a little bit more. Make that more reasonable looking. That's not more reasonable looking. But this should be nice. And then we will come into here, layer 1. Perfect. That looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy about that. And now the player, you know, they fall. And not only do they have this interesting thing over here, they can also come into this room. At which point, they'll go to a nice little secret. Sort of. Interesting. So, am I going nuts here? Like, what is happening? Oh, okay. I was out of bounds of the map. See, that's why I need to render better boundaries for the map. Anyways. So, let's go into here. We would want this in layer 2, actually. Layer 1. Let's duplicate it there, and then get out of there. And we'll say this is, well, what do we have? Cave 1 through 4, we'll make this cave 5. And let's make a cave. Tiny little room. You know, nothing super substantial, but something relatively interesting. Maybe I'll add something in later, because I don't have a lot of stuff for the player like to find. I sort of have collectibles everywhere, sort of placeholders for different kinds of collectibles and different kinds of, you know, secrets and interesting stuff that I'll want to add in. So I'll just have a collectible in here for now, but that's basically a signal to myself later, like, hey, think about what will be in here a little bit better. So that's pretty good. We'll want some I want to stretch this out a little bit more, just a tad. I shouldn't go too nuts, you know. And that's kind of a nice little thing. Okay, so there we go. We have this little secret thing. And, you know, let's go to layer 0 and just like leaf the crap out of this. Like, let's do everything. because this is like sort of like kind of underground, not really, but you know, pretty underground. Python is the editor a separate executable which loads the game DLL, or is it built into the regular exe, and for release the editor option will be deactivated? Yeah, it's the same program. You can see, like, if I go into the list of like state types, you can see, oh, you know, if you're building the editor, have the editor as a state. So in the final game, like, obviously no editor because it's like not that kind of a game. So yeah, it's just a build option. So it's just built right into the game. No problem. I can imagine a scenario where you do it the other way, though, to be fair. There's no real reason why, like, either one would be more correct, you know? It's just the way I kind of have always done it. So, you know, no reason in changing things that are perfectly fine. Let's have a little, you know, leaves and such. There we go. That looks pretty good. In layer 1, for the other sort of cave like this, I sort of had this stuff around it. And then I had leaves around this. Kind of made it feel like you're more inside something, I guess. I don't know. Who knows? Just felt right. So then on layer 1 as well, we will just kind of fill this out a little bit more with some leaves. And that should be A-okay. We sort of want these to kind of jut in here to come over the entrance a little bit. Let's go to layer 0, copy this thing, come into layer 4. Okay. All right. In layer 4, I'd like to sort of come out in a few other spots as well. Sort of jutting down, just to make it feel like you're really inside something. Let's make sure that the player is spawning in the right spot. Something like that. Did I do collision yet? I have not done a collision yet. Let me do collision here. Okay. We really don't want the player to get out of here, you know, so let's just go nuts, you know. collision editing gone wild, if you will. There we go. That is what I like to see. And that's pretty good. Okay. That's just a matter of sort of decorating this a little bit, making it look a bit better with the surrounding edges and stuff. Let's go into layer 2. Love me some sexy collision boxes. Yeah, I mean, there are many things that this game is about, and that is, like, definitely one of them, you know, just, yeah, just the pleasure of collision boxes, absolutely. Very important in the game, yeah. It's a lost art, or something like that. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I mean, this is a little bit uniform. I don't know if I like that. You know, maybe just shifting this down one. There we go. And then layer 2, I want to go into layer 4 and just make this look a little bit better here, all through here. There we go. Yeah, that's a super nice addition to the editor. Just having the ability to filter out the rendering of different layers. That's already super nice. Because I can just, for example, just get the first layer and just see sort of the core tiles. So that's really helpful. Let's do one of these things. Perfect. Cool. Almost done here. Just getting it into a somewhat okay state. Might want to change some things later, but this should be, or add a little bit of detail and stuff, but this should be pretty good for now. Okay. Yeah, let me try to just get sort of rid of all these more awkward bits here. Okay. Okay. That makes me more happy about this little secret. Let's show all the layers, and yeah, like that looks sweet. I will add a camera focus region, so it sort of zooms in on the most important parts here. Just like right in there. It's having a pretty high strength, but we do like, I really like the map swaying as the player moves, even if it is focused on a particular point. It is nice to have that sort of swaying of the camera and, you know, really displaying the parallax of the background. Looks pretty nice. So just a couple more things here. Have some of these. Ooh. Yeah. Cool. Oh, there's the crash again. Yeah. I'm gonna want to figure out why that happens. Okay. So here's the little secret room. That's pretty darn nice. I like this. So now we can just add in, let's add a collectible, you know, temporarily. Then let's add in the teleports here. So first we'll go into map. Let's copy this teleport. Put it right here. Select the bounding box, just, you know, something like that. Use the default spawn for cave 5, yes. Require interaction, no. And we'll do the same thing, except we need some sort of spawn position right here. 11515. Oh, this is getting complicated. 11515, and then like 1417 or something like that. Yeah, that's good. I wish there was a better way to sort of handle that, but it works, you know. And it never takes enough time for me to actually care. So I'll have a teleport in here. Select the bounding box, you know, over there. Use the default spawn, no. We'll spawn to 11515, 1417 on map, which will need to be renamed. Probably should do that soon. Require interaction, no. close, save, test it out. Nice. There we go. I don't know. Looks like it's like leg slides out over there. Let me fix that. Yeah, let's make sure. No legs being displayed. Yeah, those particles. I really need to sort of figure out how I'm going to do that. Because when they're... Yeah, it just does not look good. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm pretty happy about that. That's a nice little addition to the first area, for sure. Nice. Okay. So, that's probably all I'm going to get to today. Been streaming for about an hour and a half. I'll go ahead and wrap things up. I'll stick around for a little bit, see if anybody has any questions. But that is going to conclude the work for today. Yeah, so definitely put in questions if you have any. I'll do my best to answer them, and then I will go ahead and shut the stream down. Python, how is your render code set up? Are you using some kind of batch rendering and command buffers? If so, can you explain how it is done briefly? Yeah, sure. So let me go ahead and close that. So we can look into, let's go to the state game file, and let's see where I render stuff. This file's getting a little big. It'd be nice if I could add a jump list sort of around here. Okay. So, you know, I have these functions called, for example, renderer push world tile. Or, you know, there's this sprite components render function. If we go to that function, oh, whoops, that's that's not what I'm looking for. Sprite components render. Here's the declaration. So here's sort of what is what's getting called in that function. You know, there's this renderer push texture function which calls into the renderer, says, hey, draw a texture. You know, whenever you do your rendering, just builds up these stacks of requests for rendering. So if we go into the renderer code itself, I only have an OpenGL backend right now. and let's look for push texture. So this is effectively what happens, right? So each request actually, like, these push texture calls are not one-to-one with what are called renderer requests. And these renderer requests are effectively what you describe, like batch rendering calls. They say like, oh, render this many textures, you know? And every time this push texture function is called, I say, okay, well, is the active request, is it a texture call? Is the texture the same texture that's being called? Otherwise, we need to, you know, make a new request for that. Is the blending mode differently? Or is the blending mode different than the active request's blending mode? If so, then finish the active request, you know, and then create a new request. So creating a new request, and then, of course, you can sort of already see this if these things are not true. So if it's the same kind of request, if it's the same texture, and if the blending mode's the same, then it'll just keep adding sort of this information to this like batch data of texture rendering stuff. So it'll just build up these big buffers, and these request structures sort of just kind of keep a handle on which part of these request buffers are basically belong to them. And then you know, these certain requests are finished, you know, when they need to be, like here for instance. And then at the end of the frame, you know, we can go into the renderer end frame, and you can see that, like, oh, like case, here we go, renderer request texture. Is it a texture request? We find out the blend mode. If so, do the blend thing. Upload the instanced information for the texture batch that we're rendering, and then, like, we just draw the whole batch, like GL draws arrays instanced. So we sort of, the renderer code just sort of makes breaks where it knows it must. Otherwise, it tries to batch things in as good of a way as it can. So, for example, that has a lot of nice API benefits. So if I go into the state game again, you can see I have this function called, I guess world tiles aren't a good idea, but or aren't a good example. So, you know, for example, we have sprites that are rendered, right? We have static objects that are rendered. Most of them are being pulled from the same texture. They are not additive blended. They're all being pulled from the same texture. They're all textures, and they all have the same blend mode, which means what the renderer can do is just take all of them and just render all of them at once, you know, instead of having to draw each one sort of in a vacuum. So it sort of just tries to build up these requests in a smart way. So in fact, the static objects code actually calls this sprite components render, which, you know, calls this push texture function. So it just pushes all the textures, but the renderer knows that, like, hey, we have the same texture, we have the same blend mode, and we have the same request type. So we'll just keep building this request up, and then we can just send that all at once to the GPU to do rendering for that. So that's sort of the idea. The philosophy behind the renderer is, like, providing the simplest API possible that's, like, perfectly made for the game. So, for example, I don't know that. Oh yeah. So we have this push point light function, right? It's not a generic renderer. It's like, this is something built for the game. It's a point light. I mean, it could be in many games, but, you know, the point is, you know, the renderer just exposes things that are convenient entry points for the game code to have. So the game code is, like, super clear. Like, it's like, oh, you know, go through all the lights, get all the stuff, and then, like, push the point lights to the renderer. Like, very, very clear, in my opinion. Very simple. There's not a lot of rendering stuff in here. Like, it's just, hey, push a point light, and then whatever backend you have will do this however it wants to. And that's sort of the idea there. So that's a general overview. Hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully that answered your question to a good extent. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to let me know. Yeah. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes. Thanks, no problem. Yes, follow-up question. So how does OpenGL know what shader to bind? The user is never explicitly saying what shader to use. Correct. Yes, the shader is an implementation detail of the renderer. So, and this is all around that same philosophy. Just basically like, hey, do this thing however you know how. It doesn't care about shaders. It doesn't care about. I mean, it does care about textures and stuff, but it won't say like, hey, set this shader, push these constants to it, then draw the thing. Like, because the rendering API is not a wrapper API for OpenGL. It's not like that. It's more like, hey, here's the API that's perfect for the game. Do this thing that's perfect for the game, like push world tile. That's not a texture call because it has to be done a little bit differently. So, a bit of a practical reality there, but just very simple API points that just do exactly what would need to happen. Just say precisely in English what would need to happen, and then the renderer just implements that. So, for example, for the texture, you can see that I get the texture shader just explicitly, like I just hard coded in there, and I just say, hey, use the texture shader to draw a texture batch, which is just a lot clearer to me. So yeah, that's basically how it works. It's just draw a filled rectangle or a set of filled rectangles, however you know how, and this backend's answer to that is, hey, well, we're going to use the OpenGL shader for filled rectangles, and then we're going to upload the data, send whatever constants we need to, and then draw them. So this implementation is really just answering those questions. How would you draw a filled rectangle batch? And do it however you need to, and then this is just the answer to that. So, yeah. So let's run around. People can watch if they'd like to, see the game so far. Not a whole lot of content yet, obviously. But kind of a nice little start. I'm really, really happy with how the first area is sort of shaping up. Oh, I hate that bug. I need to fix that. What just happened? I didn't make this map. Placeholder vines, don't mind me. Very cool. I see. Sorry, one more thing. No worries at all. The renderer request whatever is the kind of the header for a batch, and is it set when you say in the game code, hey, I need to render textured rectangles? Yeah, like the renderer requests are actually stored like separately from actual batch information. So it's not really a header per se. It's just, and then at the end of the frame, the renderer goes through all the requests, and then it just collects the data it needs to, uploads to the GPU, does the rendering. And I would reword kind of your quoted like statement about what the game code would say. The game code never really. Part of the reason why this sort of a setup is nice is because the game code never has to say, hey, I'm ready to draw a big set of rectangles or textures or something like that. It just says, hey, draw a rectangle, and that's it. Like, it just says do the thing that is correct. And the renderer on the back end will say, oh, well, I'm getting all these rectangle requests. Well, let's batch them into one request. Yeah. So, yeah, to answer your question, not really a header, but it's sort of, but everything else you said about it was correct. Like, it serves as some information about what section of the instance data to render in a particular order. The whole reason why it's like this is so that order is maintained. You could argue about having a depth buffer and stuff, but that introduces some interesting problems. Like, for example, when you have this smooth sort of zooming in and out, you have like semi-transparent pixels on the edges of sprites that are like a depth buffer would write those over whatever is behind it. Yeah. I don't know if I explained that well, but anyways, depth buffer would introduce problems. I just wanted a simple API that kept things in the back end like the correct order, the order in which these requests were passed in. So I thought this would be the best solution. Yeah. I'd be curious to hear other approaches. It's just the thing that seemed the most straightforward to me. Just to have batching, but also making sure that things are rendered in the correct order. Because I did some experimentation with, I didn't think of depth at all. I wasn't thinking of order at the time, but I sort of experimented with a system where you have a big batch of stuff, or you have like separate batches of things, of particular instance data that you care about, like all textures in the frame or something. And I built up that buffer during the whole frame. But then, of course, you run into the issue where it's like, hey, like, what happens when you render a rectangle in between texture calls? Then, if you're not using a depth buffer, which I'm not in this case for the reason that I mentioned, where it produces artifacts on the sides of sprites and stuff like that, for that reason, it's very important that you render these things in order. So the system is sort of just trying to maintain the order and but also just combine things where it makes sense to. So that's the idea. That being said, it doesn't look like there are more questions. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the stream. I very much appreciate everybody who came on and everybody who's watching later on the stream archive. Got some pretty cool stuff done today. Did some more map work mostly. Some small UI improvements in the editor just for convenience sake as I was going along. But yeah, it's been a blast. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I will see you next time. Take care.